All right. Last thing I want to talk about is actually the thing that's been bothering me the most all weekend. I saved it for the end just because I didn't want to ruin the show. But what's been bothering me all weekend is this push by, how should I start this? Let me start here. On the screen, I have a news article from the New York Journal. And the headline reads, "Destruction of the warship Maine was the work of an enemy." And this article, in the headline, the subheadline, it says, Assistant Secretary Roosevelt convinced that the explosion of the warship was not an accident. This subsequently led to the Spanish-American War. Spanish-American War, February 15th, 1898, came on the heels of the explosion of the USS Maine, docked in Havana Harbor. The reason I showed you the headline is because the role that the media played in rallying the public opinion as well as the leadership and convincing us to go to war. This was not the first time the media has been complicit in war making, nor would it be the last time, but it is a significant flashpoint because of the specific role that this one media outlet controlled by one major source had on all of the population. And it was the purest example of yellow journalism, where they presented just enough or not enough legitimate information, nothing substantive, but just enough to inflame the passions of the people reading their articles. And as I thought it was William Randolph Hearst. It was his paper published years of story concerning Spain's brutal treatment of Cubans, pushing America towards public intervention. He ran articles daily blaming Spain for sinking of the Maine, claimed that Spain had blown it up with a mine, and no one knows exactly why the ship exploded, but it didn't matter why the ship exploded. All that mattered was the people believed, according to the headline, that it was the work of what? The enemy. Subsequently leading to the onset of the Spanish-American War. And I put that in there because there are people, this is the clip that you're seeing now is Theodore Roosevelt and his Rough Riders in the middle of the Spanish-American War. I put this in here because it's important for us to realize the role that the media plays in generating public opinion. And in their generating of public opinion, they have the media has the ability to set the public opinion either towards war or against war. And like I said, this was not the first time, most certainly not the last time. The most recent example would be the Iraq War. And with reporter Judith Miller of the New York Times, she reported that in the Iraq, and actually let me pull up a picture of her because I want you to make sure you see, and Judith Miller is actually still a person who is active in our politics today. Judith Miller reported that metal tubes were bound for Iraq, which is an obvious indication of weapons of mass destruction. In her article, she quoted an unnamed American official and an American intelligence expert. And the Bush administration officials that Iraq had, she claimed that the Bush administration officials had stepped up its quest for nuclear weapons and had embarked on a worldwide hunt for materials to make an atomic bomb. This was in her article in around 2002. This is important because her role as a journalist was actually used by Condoleezza Rice, Colin Powell, Donald Rumsfeld. They all use her article as justifications for their position to go to war with Iraq. She continued to print pro-war stories, claiming the U.S. has discovered weapons of mass destruction for some time, and her claims were eventually refuted. But her individual article is a prime example of how the media is able to control the outcome of whether or not we go to war. So in the first example, you have William Hearst's paper, the New York Journal, being used to generate public opinion and to push public opinion towards war. In the second example, you have a journalist whose article was used as evidence as to why we must go to war. Not to mention all of the surrounding newspapers that were pounding the drums of war along the way. The reason I mention this is because I'm starting to see a very troubling trend in liberal media, particularly around Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin, and the DNC leaks. The DNC leaks, Donald Trump is allegedly being the beneficiary, the recipient of the goodwill and the good wishes of the Putin empire. And the accusation is that Vladimir Putin has a vested interest in seeing Donald Trump become president. And this is what's being sold, right? This is what's being touted on a major outlet that people think is liberal, but it actually isn't. But for the sake of this conversation, MSNBC is a liberal rag. And on MSNBC, instead of discussing the substance of the emails, instead of discussing why the DNC was colluding for Hillary Clinton and colluding with the media in order to push Hillary Clinton and sabotage Bernie Sanders' campaign, what they would rather do instead is use their media outlets as a means of pushing the narrative that it is more important that we focus on Vladimir Putin and Russia's involvement in these leaks than it is to discuss the substance of the leaks. And amazingly enough, Mike Pence, the vice presidential candidate for Donald Trump, actually came out with the most measured response. He said that we must do both and. It is important for us to address whether or not Russia had involvement and what that involvement was, and to penalize Russia for their involvement. However, it should not be a distraction from the reality of what's in the emails. But because they have a vested interest in never discussing what is in the emails, they would rather pound the drums of a Cold War and potentially a hot war with Russia. And they're doing so simply as, well, nothing more than a deflection. Listen in.
I think we are in a situation of a national security crisis that is only going to get bigger. I think the Russians are running a strategic political warfare operation against the United States, and that we are at cyber war with them, like Director of National Intelligence Clapper said on Monday. As far as the DOD and Cyber Command is concerned, we're at war with Russia. Now, what appears to be happening is that they are running an operation to select or influence their preferred candidate to get into the White House. And I think Katie Tur hit it right on the head. Do you have any pause about what you're doing? And he had no pause whatsoever, which means that this is how his decision-making process will occur. We are in danger. Our national intelligence and national security and the American democratic establishment of choosing a presidency is under attack right now, and we really need to take this seriously. And I certainly hope investigations are going to start.
This is this is not Fox News. If you weren't watching it and you were listening via the radio, you would have thought this was Fox News, scaring their audience into believing that Russia is the big bad wolf that we should be concerned about. This was not Fox News. This was MSNBC, the quote unquote liberal station. And on the liberal station, they are going full-throated into the conversation about Russia being responsible for these leaks and the type of danger that we are in because of Russia's involvement with these leaks, and the type of response that we should have because Russia was involved with these leaks. Also, that these people never have to address the substance of the goddamn leaks. They would rather go and have the language of a Cold War instead of addressing the fact that the DNC needs to be gutted and stripped from the top to the bottom. And this coming from the liberal side, quote unquote, of America. We've seen it before, 1898, the Spanish-American War, brought to you in part by the medium, by William Randolph Hearst. We saw it with 2002, with the Iraq War, brought to you in part by journalists, ambitious journalists trying to get a headline and trying to get clicks. Well, and now we're seeing it with a different motivation, simply as a distraction to deflect from the reality and the substance of what was found in the WikiLeaks. You would think that liberals would be more cautious about beating the drums of war because of our experience with George W. Bush and the Iraq War. But once it benefits their particular narrative, they are just as willing to turn into hawks as any conservative, because it benefits them to point the finger at Putin instead of pointing the finger at the DNC. They are more willing to speak boldly and firmly as though Putin is a direct threat to our national interest, all so that we can completely ignore the fact that the DNC is guilty as hell of colluding on behalf of Hillary Clinton. No, I don't think if Putin is responsible for this, then he should not get a free pass. But you know what? Putin did not write those emails. And so if Putin wrote the emails, then yes, let's talk about Putin. But Putin didn't write the damn emails. Donna Brazile wrote the emails. People in the DNC, Debbie Wasserman Schultz wrote the emails. Leadership, top to bottom, participated in these emails. But instead of being willing to address the substance of it, they would rather use their role in journalism to beat and pound the drums of war. And I would say a pox and a plague on all of your houses, but unfortunately, I probably live next to some of you bastards. So instead of that, get your shit together and stop being complicit. Stop being yellow journalists. Get a real job. Get real journalistic integrity and address the issue substantively instead of just using your platform for propaganda. I'll talk to you guys next time.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog, join the Progressive Army, and support The Benjamin Dixon Show. It's Ben Dixon! If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.
Consider becoming a Patreon. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show.